But the SEC has not failed to carry out its primary mission, which is to protect the titans of Wall Street, to make sure they're still getting our 401k money directly, but that our wrath is diverted. So we have our choice in these budget hearings. We can have a lapdog, or we can have an emaciated lapdog. This isn't much of a choice for the American people. When you see that how the Madoff situation was handled, because it's much simpler than the much more important handling of mortgage-backed securities, you see a hear no evil, see no evil, protect all the folks on Wall Street that go to the right clubs approach. And then you see no one gets fired. Yeah, if you watch porn, you'll be fired. But no one gets fired for intentionally closing their eyes to obvious information, whether it is AAA for Alt-A, or whether it is Madoff, or whether it is Stanford. And so I hope that we will have hearings not just on their budget, but on the culture of the SEC and what we can do to turn them into the watchdog they ought to be. Yield back.
And I thank the gentleman for yielding back, and of course the gentleman is free to explore those other issues today during your questioning period.
Mr. Cook, if you allowed the pitcher to select the umpire, at the end of the game, that pitcher would be awarded the Cy Young Award. The only thing that both the Democrats and Republicans on the investigatory commission of the meltdown agreed on was that the system of allowing those who issue bonds to pick their credit rating agency was at the core of the suffering that the American people are enduring today. As part of Dodd-Frank, we passed Section 939F, which resembled an amendment I suggested in this committee that was further improved by Senator Franken and then kind of mashed around during the conference committee process. It gives you 2 years as an absolute maximum. First 7 or 8 months, you haven't published a single piece of paper to even start a process which is critical. I don't think investors are going to be dumb enough to accept AAA on Alt-A in the future, but there's so many other bond products that can be exaggerated and form the basis of next decade's meltdown. Are you going to take the full 2 years, the absolute maximum given you by the statute? And why should it take 2 years?
Well, Congressman, we will move forward with this study, which is a very important study, as quickly as we can. We're hoping to...
but you've accomplished nothing in the first 8 months.
Yeah, we've recommended to the Commission, and hope will be out shortly, a solicitation of comment from the industry so that we can take those into account in developing this study. There are other studies that we have to do that have a 1-year time frame, so frankly, we've been trying to prioritize our work in this area as well as our work in other areas.
Are any of those studies designed to deal with a problem that was more at the core of the meltdown? 8 months, nothing happens. Sounds like business as usual. I'm not so sure that business as usual is what we expect from the SEC. Is it your interpretation of the code section that when this process is over, we're going to end the system where the bond issuer selects the credit rating agency?
My understanding of the statute is that we will study the conflicts and alternative ways of addressing the conflicts, and either then pursue the version that was in the bill that had been passed by the committee, or another version if we find that's appropriate.
But another version to achieve
yes, to achieve the same objectives.
Thank you.
Congressman, I would also...
Yes.
I was just going to say, I would also add that the bill requires, and we have begun to execute, comprehensive exams of all credit rating agencies, looking at things including conflicts of interest. That's an extensive process. We're 3/4 of the way through that.
That's a different process. I'm really focused on the 939F process, but I do have a question or two for you, and let's talk about Madoff. he files financial statements year after year showing billions of dollars. The first thing you look at on a financial statement is the auditor's letter. Is it an unqualified opinion? Who signed it? You look at the Madoff letter, it's signed by an accounting firm nobody's heard of. Take 10 minutes to realize the accounting firm was too small to do the audit and to be independent of the client. So if somebody had spent even an hour, any time in a decade, looking at those financial statements, they would have discovered the Madoff problem. Who is it at your organization that decided not to spend an hour at any time in a decade looking at Madoff's financial statements? How much time was spent reviewing his filings year after year after year? And has anybody been fired for deciding not to look at his statements?
Congressman, the process that was in place regarding looking at firms and those kind of risks has changed significantly.
I'm not asking about the changes. I'm asking about the past.
With regard specifically,
how much time was spent looking at the Madoff material in the decade prior to his catastrophe?
In fairness, a significant amount of time was spent looking at Madoff and examining Madoff.
If you had spent half an hour looking at his filings, you didn't have to go out to his office. You just had to look at what he filed with you for half an hour. This thing is obvious.
And so today we have procedures.
I'm not asking about today. I'm asking why your organization, whose job it is to impose accountability on the biggest financial institutions in this country and in the world, has zero accountability for its own employees. You are the accountability-less accountants.
An independent party firm was brought in to do an extensive investigation of the individuals involved in the Madoff matter. That independent third party has issued its recommendation.
How much does whitewash cost?
I'm sorry?
When you buy whitewash at the hardware store, how much does it cost? It's 2 years. Nobody's been fired. Nobody's at blame. Nobody's accountable. And that's the only agency we have, or we had no agency at all.
There are individuals going through the disciplinary process now, and that's reaching conclusion, and the government rules are defining that process, but it's close to reaching conclusion.
Could you submit to this committee a new process for dealing with employees so that if something like this happened again, the responsible parties would be fired within a couple of weeks? That was a question.
We would be happy to work with the parties, Office of Management and Budget, and others that represent the government rules that define our disciplinary process to share our experience on that process. We would be happy to inform any amendments or reforms to that process.
And I thank the gentleman.